Hey everyone, welcome to the Fattleballins channel, and today we will be going through Tier 1 of Satisfactory Update 4. After progressing from Tier 0, I put attention towards the base building milestone of Tier 1. I also began to convert all of my leaves and wood into a more efficient biomass for my biomass burners. I created an additional biomass burner in order to power my expanding base. I kept investing time into power by gathering leaves, wood, and hooking up my copper automation to my power grid, as it was unaccounted for in Tier 0 due to lack of power production. As I continued crafting more biomass, I realized that it would be much easier to just automate the production of biomass, so I did that. I also realized that when I would be unlocking my base building milestone that I'd need a greater amount of concrete production, so I built miners on 2 additional nodes that were near my base. I also automated the production of screws, additional iron plates, additional iron rods, and then finally unlocked the base building milestone. Meanwhile, I found a green power slug hanging out near my base. I realized that there were more exciting things to do out in the world, so I began exploring again. I decided that with my new base building techniques, I could create a bridge towards that one drop pod I was unable to reach in the last episode. While building the bridge, I was fortunate enough to discover a glitch and plummet to my death. Thankfully, I was able to die again, thanks to a lack of a Xenozapper to fight back against the vultures guarding my loot. I took a back road way to my loot, running into a horde of spiders. Thanks to my years in the dojo, I was able to dodge the spiders easy peasy. I gathered my loot and made my escape. I had a close encounter, however, with some fiendish boars, but our hero made it out alive. I returned to my bridge, finished building it, and destroyed an alpha spitter guarding the drop pod. I gathered the resources around the drop pod and obtained my first hard drive. I then passed the teasing slug, trying again for over a minute to grab it. Of course, I couldn't. I got another hard drive and found a new drop pod guarded by some flies and an alpha spitter. I had a close call fighting them, but I was able to conquer the area. I grabbed my first Mercer Sphere and started heading back to my base. I again passed the teasing slug. However, I now knew better than to give in to the temptations the slug inflicted upon me. I returned back to my base very briefly in order to store some items I had gathered, and refuel the biomass burners that had been running the entire time. I continued my adventures again. Quickly into my adventure, I discovered some invisible gas clouds that ended my life. I realized that I needed some healing items to make it into the gas clouds and back. I gathered all of my berries and used them to regain my loot. Then, of course, I strategically looked away from my screen so that I could fall into a deadly abyss of many stronger gas clouds, leaving most of my healing items in the abyss. Fortunately, I had some mushrooms left at my base, and I was able to grab my loot and escape after consuming 14 of my 17 mushrooms. I decided that I needed a break after that play, so I waited until April 1st to play again. I was not at all disappointed when I returned. After spending some time to admire the changes to the lizard dog for April Fools, I decided to explore more. I began to realize that perhaps there were more changes added to the game other than the massive lizard dog. While exploring, I found Mercer Spheres, a yellow power slug, green power slugs, and a drop pod that offered me a hard drive. I also harassed a lizard dog. Anyways, while exploring I found a majestic beast in the wild, one which I tamed and wisely named Mitch M. Dot. However, in the heat of a battle, I accidentally zapped Mitch, causing him to scream and cry and run away. Fortunately, I was able to feed him some food and he forgave me for the abuse. I continued exploring, running into some more glitches, a cowardly alpha spitter, and a group of creatures guarding another pod. I realized that I had a full inventory, so I returned to my base. I stored the items that I had gathered, refueled my biomass burners, and unlocked the logistics milestone. I realized that I had run the concrete production for a long enough time that I could begin building a proper factory. After some consideration, I decided that I would build my factory like a city, with many buildings all connected by roads. The first building I made utilized a pure iron node, outputting 60 iron rods per minute and taking about half an hour to build. The next building utilized two pure iron nodes, outputting 120 iron rods per minute and taking the same time to build as the last one. I expanded my roads towards one of the limestone nodes and the copper node. I felt too lazy to do a building for the first limestone node, so I just converted 60 limestone per minute into 20 concrete per minute. I did build a building for the copper, however, one that would output 60 wire and 30 cable per minute off of a pure copper node. The building took about 15 minutes to create. I built more roads, reaching another limestone node, and repeating the same process on that one as the first. I also found and tamed a lizard dog next to my base. However, because of its size and desire to follow me, it interrupted my building process greatly. Anyways, I built a building for iron plate production and another for a warehouse for storage. I then created conveyor belts along the roads in order to transport the items from each building to the warehouse. I expanded my roads toward the final limestone node, creating another 20 concrete per minute. I created an area dedicated toward powering the factory, and a pedestal that would house the hub, equipment workshop, and eventually the MAM. Once I was satisfied with my city, I unlocked the final milestone of Tier 1, Field Research. I began researching many of the items that I had gathered along my adventure so far. I also spent almost an hour gathering Caterium, sulfur, and quartz for research purposes. I unlocked many useful things through research, such as alternative recipes thanks to the hard drives, zip lines, and overclocking. I also created a color gun to color my base like honey. I then created a small area to automatically create biomass. After that, I realized that I had done all I could in Tier 1, and that I'd now be moving on to Tier 2.